Welcome to SkyeTeam's People First with Morag Barrett.
Welcome to this week's episode of People First. And my guest this week is Russel Lolacher, who is an international speaker and the founder and host of a fabulous podcast called Relationships at Work. Are you wondering why we connected? Anyway, on his podcast, Relationships at Work, it's the guide to creating connections and avoiding leadership blind spots. He's held successful leadership and communication roles for nearly 25 years, retaining one team from almost a dozen of those. The same team members, Russell?
Yep, every single one.
Yeah. I will be interested to learn more about the secret there beyond locking them in a room and not letting them out. But I understand that's not encouraged. No. So anyway, successful leader and communication roles. His work and expertise in building employee and customer trust has been recognized on international stages in multiple publications and as a 4 times named top thought leader by the International Customer Management Institute, ICMI. Well, Russell, welcome to People First.
Thank you so much for having me, Morag. I appreciate it.
I am so looking forward to our conversation, and we'll get into relationships at work and how relationships work at work and how relationships don't work at work. No. But I want to start with your origin story. So when you were a wee lad and the teacher said, Russell, pay attention. What do you want to be when you grow up? What was your answer back then?
Oh, I toiled on this. I knew this question was coming. And first, I don't get to use the word toiled very often, so I'm thrilled. No. I think I don't know if I could ever pinpoint a specific, this was my box of what I wanted to be when I grew up, but it always involved something about performing or being on a stage. I assumed it might have been acting or musical something, because that's where I went initially in early years. So It was definitely a performer or entertainer. I went into radio broadcasting, so maybe that was me scratching that itch, but I couldn't see X, but that was the journey, was me trying to figure it out.
Interesting. And now you're an international keynote speaker, so you are on that stage. So give us one tip, one nugget of advice in terms of how do you prepare for those speaking engagements and being on the main stage?
A lot. You prepare a lot. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. It is a performance. I think a lot of people don't understand that presentations are about presenting, not reporting. It is not a presentation where you're reading back a PowerPoint presentation behind you. You are the star of the show, not the slide deck. So it's really important for you to rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Where are the jokes? Where are the pauses? How is one slide flowing into another? Where are the stories? You have to look at it as a holistic experience that your audience will connect to. It's about what they want to hear and not just what you want to say. So you have to rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. I don't know if I've gotten that through or not, but rehearse.
I love that. And too often, I know we're going to talk about leadership blind spots, but if there's one leadership blind spot that I know I've made early in my career, but I see leaders at all levels making time and time again, it connects back to what you just said on rehearsing, is invariably the less effective leaders are the ones who wing it, and the ones who wing it for their team because, hey, well, it's just my team, it doesn't matter. Or, hey, I've worked with these people for 12 years. They know, they'll understand. What's your reaction to that?
It's arrogant as hell. It is so narcissistic. It should be more important. It's so important to have that first impression. Absolutely. There's enough leaders that talk about their brand and so forth that makes my eyes roll, but it's still really important for you to understand how you show up. But we're going back to that relationships thing, is if you don't treat the relationships as important, as special, as worth putting the effort into day to day operationally, then it's going to affect the culture that you're trying to build around that team, even if you've known them for 5 years, 1 year, or 12 years.
So let's pick up on that theme of relationships, because I've already shared your podcast is called Relationships at Work.
Sure.
Why this passion and focus for the interdependence and the relationships of how work gets done?
Well, it's funny. It's a funny place that I started. I actually really started down the path of I hate bullies. was actually got me down this path more than anything. I've always hated seeing people be mistreated by other human beings. And it initially got me really interested in customer service, which you sort of mentioned in my bio is
Hmm.
where I focused on. But that was an easy pivot. I was at a conference once and it was a customer service conference I was speaking at. And I started asking a lot of attendees and other speakers about, so what are you doing for your employees? And I'll be honest, more like the glazed eyes that I got. This is 2017, 2018, where it's like, oh, right, employees. Because in their brain,
Hmm.
customer equals money. Employee is a, not is a,
Cost.
a cost, is a cost center. So that wasn't something we invested. Obviously, the world has shifted quite a bit since the pandemic. Not enough. It shifted, but that really got me pivoting around the I hate people being treated badly. And that seems more evident inside organizations. We have enough people that were talking about customers at the time. I really was passionate about how we need to treat each other better in that humanity sense inside organizations. And the funny thing is almost everything we've ever done for customers can very easily be changed and translated to an internal audience, to your employees. Loyalty, retention, and all that stuff is vastly important inside an organization because truthfully, those are the people that are dealing with your customers. So why not
Hmm.
on them first?
So, to what end then? Because again, it's easy to say, oh, well, yes, but it's a cost center. I don't have time. I have this next
Oh,
deal to close, this next customer to satisfy. So, what's in it for leaders who choose, even at their own table,
sure.
to invest in their team members? What do they get from that?
I think the biggest thing of anything is retention. People will
Hmm.
stay in organizations they want to stay in, that they have relationships with. People will leave organizations not necessarily on the work, but on the relationships they have or don't have within the organization. We always hear that phrase of people don't leave jobs, they leave bad bosses, which I even challenge that idea. I think they really leave those cultures. And leadership has a direct influence and impact on that culture. It's either the direct relationship they have or the relationship they have with the larger organization. So I think that's vitally important is that we treat people like humans. There's so many studies out there that will tell you how much it costs to rehire, retrain. Why not keep and invest in the people that you already have there? What was the point of hiring them if you never wanted to build a relationship that was going to be long term to start with? It's not transactional.
It's
Yeah,
not transactional. And it was interesting. I want to go a little deeper on what you said earlier. You said that we've all heard that phrase that people um, leave bad bosses, and you disagree. Or you challenge it. It's not that you
yeah.
disagree with it. There's an essence of truth in all of these, but you're saying it's more about the culture. So help me understand the difference and how you've reframed that.
Absolutely. It's a nice bumper sticker to say that people don't, bad jobs, they leave bad bosses. And it's true to a point, but every organization, it does not matter how healthy the culture is, bad staff will come through, bad leaders will exist. Where I challenge this is that what does the organization do about those bad leaders? Because as you and I both know, leadership is broken in the sense that there is very little training, very little support.
Hmm.
People are put in these positions because they were great at a job, not because they were great with people. They fixed somebody's problem or somebody knew them and liked working with them. It has nothing to do with the fact of their creating other leaders, creating a better environment. We don't ask those questions in hiring panels or promotional panels. So it's really, really important for us to understand that organizations have a role to play when it comes to bad leaders. Are they training those bad leaders? Are they even aware of those bad leaders? Are they holding them accountable? Are they holding the bad leader's boss accountable for allowing that bad behavior to perpetuate and exist? There's such a bigger picture that we don't take into cookie cutter sayings like that
Hmm.
I think are too symptom focused and not disease focused. And so we need to look at the bigger ecosystem of leadership and understand what are we rewarding? What are we promoting? But then again, what is our lip service around defining what leadership is? Because we never define leadership. We just say it on posters and put it on websites, but don't actually say what it means. So people follow this Brene Brown, Simon Sinek, create new leaders, feel that, the vibe of creation. but then the organization's promoting and rewarding people that aren't doing those things, that are just
Mm-hmm.
fixing problems. So then if I'm a new hire or a mid-level career, I'm looking at that going, but why invest in that training if I'm not going to get more money or get rewarded or get the opportunities for it? So it's a really push and pull. So I think organizations really need to understand ecosystems of leadership and what can go into fostering and festering bad leadership to really get to the root of the problem.
Ooh, fostering and festering. I'm going to
Oh, I like
write that
alliteration.
down. I do too. Fostering or festering. All right. So you talked there about good leaders. Great. You need to understand what it takes to be a great leader. Bad leaders are always going to exist. It's what do you do to address them? And I know it's easy to sit here going, well, yes, bad leaders, that's everybody else. I'm fine. I'm an above average driver. That's okay. So how do you turn that around? What's your leadership philosophy in terms of what do you believe it takes to be a great leader?
I think it comes down to three key pieces. And I've just added a third recently because I was really pushing the first two.
Three elements of surprise.
Three. The first is self-awareness.
Okay.
We don't know ourselves well enough. We don't know how we show up at work, how we handle anger, how we handle disappointment, how we treat
Mm-hmm.
our teams when we're feeling those emotions, how we, handle success, how we handle survey results that may not be going the way we want. How are we
Mm-hmm.
showing up? How well do we know ourselves in order to best connect and build those relationships? Because I've always loved there's this relationship metaphor where there's three people in every relationship. There's me, there's the other person, and then there's that middle piece of what we co-create together. So before you can co-create, you need to start with yourself. It's that person in the mirror
Mm-hmm.
conversation of knowing what are you bringing to the middle piece. Because if you're a poisoned person, if you don't know you, or maybe you're amazing, I don't know, but you really need to know that in order to understand what you can co-create in that relationship. So first off, it's self knowing yourself. Second is that situational awareness piece. And that is, do you understand the environment in which you are entering? Now, I go
Mm-hmm.
a little further with the situational awareness sort of thing, and I look at it as three levels. There is the air, land, and sea. So air, high level, big, is the stuff we don't have any control over whatsoever. For example, pandemics, economic
Mm-hmm.
challenges, can't pay rent. My kid has something after school and I have no flexible hours. How am I going to deal with it? So, as a leader, do we understand the pressures that are going on our staff that have nothing to do with the organization, but absolutely impact the employee and how they show up? And it's our awareness of those factors. I remember doing a list in one exercise for a keynote I was doing, and I came up with 9 things that had nothing to do with the organization. But these were 9 pressures that their employees on a day-to-day basis were dealing with that had nothing to do
Mm-hmm.
with the leader, but the leader needed to be aware of. The next is land, and that's where the culture hits. That's where understanding the economics of the organization. Can they do raises? Are they doing promotions? Um, do these two people work together well? It's all that's happening around you from the situational awareness. The C goes back to the earlier one, which is the situational awareness. So it's really that what you can't control, what you can influence, and of course, what you can completely control, which is yourself. So that's a situational awareness piece, which I really think is vital.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third piece, which is amazing that I did not include this considering my background, which is communication. You have to
Okay.
be an effective communicator. And I think a lot of organizations confuse communication with broadcasting. They think it's a one-way conversation. I sent an email, everybody knows I communicated. That's not communication. Communication is 101 here. We're going back to basics because I don't think we spend enough time on basics. Definitions, as I said earlier. Communication is not just what's said, but what's understood by the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So you will hear leaders go, I said a thing. They didn't understand it. They're idiots. They don't get it. Well, guess whose fault that is? Yours, because you don't understand the audience well enough to craft your message in a way that they understand it. So communication as a leader That is the DNA of how you engage, connect, and build those relationships. Trust is built from that. So many things are built from communications that I don't think it's prioritized enough, because I will tell you that communication is the DNA of great leadership, but you can go into any organization and communication is so taken for granted. It is so
Hmm.
undervalued. It is so, well, communication's easy. I've been doing it since I was 3. I'm like, "Oh my god." So it is so not prioritized, and yet it is so important. It just breaks my little heart.
Yeah, there's a phrase and a quote that I can't quite remember about the biggest challenge with communication is the illusion that it's happened. And of course, we've got Slack off on my left here. We've got text with my phone and emails. We've got so many things coming at us. It just fuels that illusion that I've seen it all, but the reality is I'm having to sift all the time. So self awareness, situational awareness, and communication. And what I liked is that they almost form a virtuous loop, because no matter where you are, you have to come back to self awareness to, did I achieve the impact that I intended? And if not, which of these levers do I need to pull or adjust next time around?
And it's so important to understand. I love that you nailed the piece around intention versus impact, because
Hmm.
leaders spend so much time on intention because they're busy. They're being pulled in so many different directions that they're like, go do a thing. Okay, I went and did the thing. Then they move on to something else without understanding any idea of what the impact was of what they did or didn't do. And I think part of that is really understanding the impact is the reason people stay or don't stay, feel valued, don't feel valued. And intention's
Hmm.
great, but you've got to close the loop.
So I'm curious. I mean, in the introduction, I shared how you have had a long and successful career. May it long and continue to be successful.
I'm old.
But you also had a team that was intact for 12 years. So
Correct.
did you know this before, during, or after that team?
Did I know that they were going to stick around for 12 years?
Well, no, 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 because none of, I mean, we can hope, and sometimes we hope that some people self-select off.
Sure.
No, the self-awareness, the situational awareness, and then the communication, those three pillars. Were you aware of those as you went into leading that team, or was it's a chicken and egg question, which
It's
came first in terms of your understanding of what it took to be a good leader?
and that's a great question. Um, was I self-aware? I don't think consciously I might have been. I was in my execution, but again, I'm literally saying self-awareness wasn't there about my
Hmm.
self-awareness, to be completely honest. Um, I've always been really strong at communication. That's my background, that's my training, that is what is the glue of every piece of my career. But to be a great communicator, as you say, you have to go back in awareness and self-awareness. I don't know if I connected those dots consciously. I just took for granted that I was really good at communication, not understanding what goes into being a great communicator and what you need to do to get a point across or understand. So, sort of, I guess, would be the answer to the question. Is I did, but subconsciously, and only through that experience and that journey with that team did it solidify a bit more of reverse engineering, of
Hmm.
really figuring out, why has this been so effective? Oh, it's because I started here and before I was able to get there.
And I love that, even that pause to reflect, because I've shared in podcast guest appearances I've had early in my career, I valued independence. I wanted to be the low maintenance team member where you gave me the challenge or the target, and I went off and did it, because you've got enough other folks or projects to manage. You don't need
Right.
to manage me. And it took me a while, and probably when I was writing Cultivate, as I realized that interdependence was, in fact, the secret to success. It's the how we work together, or how we work around our differences, if there is and when there is friction. And so for me, it was, the shift came after I had
Mhm.
made some of the unconscious changes in how I was showing up for those who were working with and for me.
But you need that space. Like, it is so important. And I talk about this a lot. Is I talk about the 7 deadly sins of leadership, and I think one of the biggest sins is too busy. I am too busy. I call it
Hmm.
the sin of negligence. And the thing is we can't be leaders, as you and I are describing the success we've had as leaders, without pausing, without having the space to consider, strategize, understand. If we're living by calendar appointment, by calendar appointment, by calendar appointment, and the only thing that we're focusing on is when I can possibly go to the bathroom, because that's the only,
Hmm.
I'm trying to find space to just go, I'm going to be late to this meeting because I just have to go back. There's no capacity to be a leader. You are just a cog in a wheel moving from meeting to meeting. So, in order to be able to understand a team so they stay around for 12 years, to take that pause, you have to build in that space. You have to be precious with those boundaries. I was talking to an executive director not too long ago where we were talking about the mental toll of being so busy. Physical toll, you know what? You can take an hour and you're back after the gym or whatever.
Hmm.
You can take mental exhaustion, which comes from meeting after meeting, talking and talking, listening and listening, looking at a screen. That takes a lot longer to come back from. And you're supposed to be a leader in that time with that amount of energy. I don't know how that's possible. So, in order to be able to prioritize the things you and I know that build a healthy environment, you also have to prioritize things like time and space. And you have to have an organization that values that time and space and doesn't just look at space in a calendar as something that they need to fill, but it is
Oh,
time that is actually being used for leadership.
so I'm going to let you and those watching this, if you're listening, I'll describe it for you momentarily. This is how I build it in. And on my computer screen here, I have this very scientific post-it note. It's a yellow 3x3 post-it note for those who can't see it. And it has 5 words written on it that just coincidentally start with the letter F. Fitness, fun, focus, friends, and flexibility. And that's flexibility in a yoga bendy sort of way, as opposed to changing my focus sort of way. And that is my anchor point for, am I working on the things that I've said are important to me versus letting my calendar or my inbox drive my priorities?
Love that.
And whilst it's no longer daily, certainly weekly, I will, because it's right in my line of sight, it's more reflecting on, did I do my best to ensure that these things happened? And even on my off days, like I've been getting over a cold, so I have not focused on fitness because I could barely get upstairs without coughing up a lung. But it's the, did I do my best to at least move a little bit? And when am I going to start rescheduling and getting back onto that gym habit? So that's one example that
Mhm.
works for me this year. It's a sticky note, and I've just said it. I've told my team, my calendar is color coded to match these 5 priorities. If they see things on my calendar that don't seem to align to a color, they've got explicit permission to kick my ass and hold me accountable. But as you think about that, and as you think about the tips and techniques you've seen others work, Russell, what's one thing leaders could do to help elevate their own leadership reputation and impact?
Well, the first thing I want to say is, A, I love your alliteration again. And I will mention that what we so miss about leaders is the first person they need to lead is themselves. They need to be better leaders for themselves, not just their teams. And that is a perfect example of you being a better leader for you to show up in the
Hmm.
way you need to, what you need to prioritize. The one thing I would recognize, I mean, there's so many things leaders can
Pick
do.
one.
Pick one.
Pick
I
one.
will I will say something that's helped me a lot. I can't scream to the mountaintops high enough about how meditation has been so helpful for me, and that doesn't need to come only in the morning or right before you go to bed. It is a sanity break in the day. It doesn't
Hmm.
need to be 3 hours, it could be 12 minutes to just have that time to center, focusing on your breath. It is we're not looking to change the world here, we're just looking for you to get focused, to tune out what's going around and all the other thoughts that are sort of pulling and pressing, and all the narratives we're telling ourselves or the other priorities. Just taking 12 minutes and being consistent on a daily basis of taking that amount of time has been so helpful for myself in just changing my perspective, not getting I'm pretty fiery. I got a bit of a passion to me. Um, so having said that, having meditation sort of keeps myself in check where I
Yep.
can take a breath and know I won't just go off on something because somebody was wronged or I didn't like how that happened. I can actually have the skills now where I'm just sort of like, and that all came from meditation.
The power of the pause. We talk about something similar in our book, You, Me, We. It's the look up, show up, step up. And it's an intentional break, whether it's 5 seconds before you get on the next Teams or Zoom call, 5 minutes before you walk into the meeting, to think about, A, what are those air pressures that you talked about, the things that are weighing on me that might be impacting, and how do I want to leave others feeling as a result of this next interaction, and then making an intentional choice about how do I need to show up to make that happen. And then the third element, step up, is doing what we know we should do, especially as you just described, under times of uncertainty, change, or pressure, because that's often where the rule book gets thrown out and I snip at you, or I'm a little bit more directive, and then I go, oh, but Russell, I was having a tough day. And guess what? Russell doesn't care. I need to either say, hey, Russell, I'm having a bad day. So if I'm a little short, stop me and let me clarify, versus it being a retrospective. Better still, let it go. That was me screwing up the bad day and throwing it away, and showing up as the best you can in that moment.
I
It's
literally had a
awareness.
conversation with my team the other day going, so I've started the keto diet and I have no sugar and
Oh,
carbs in me right now. So I am
grumpy.
just an ass. So I apologize if things are coming out not the way I intend, but I'm dealing with some crazy cravings right now. But if they
Yeah.
have the context, they're going to be way more compassionate and
Yes.
empathetic and understanding, because it's so relatable, because they'll show up another day going through something similar or
Oh,
worse or easier.
yes. And that's it. The difference there, by making the implicit explicit, is it's an explanation, not an excuse. So they can
Mhm,
still
mhm.
hold you accountable for, I know you're grumpy, have this, cookie or something, because you just need a something. We'll break it for today. But if we don't make the implicit explicit, because, oh, well, this is personal and they're going to think, then you can guarantee your team is writing a story. And what I know from the research we've done here at SkyeTeam is those stories are personal, they
Mhm.
are inevitably negative, and they're going to assume the worst. And so by coming up front with the explanation, you can knock that on the head before it becomes gossip or undermines you and your team.
We're tying it back to communication.
It is. Everything is connected. I love it. But it comes
Yeah,
down to the human element.
it does.
And the fact we can't leave our emotions at the door, the fact that you've chosen this diet for your health and fitness, etc., at 9 o'clock or whatever your start time is, it doesn't flick a switch. When you come into the office, it doesn't change who you are. We're bringing everything with us. So isn't it better if we just make a little bit more of that transparent to the people around us? Not all of it, but some more of it, so that we can work better together, to your point, because you're having a rough day today. I'll be having a rough day next week. It's a bit of yin and yang.
And I always find it funny that for some reason in the workplace, we treat these things like they're super special the minute we flick on our computer screen or walk through an office door. Like suddenly we're not humans anymore. Suddenly
Mhm.
trust is a strategy that we need to write down, or relationships is a 3 month tactic. No, it's, do you have friends at home? What did you do to build friendships? It's the same thing at work. There's just a different accountability and responsibilities attached to it. This is not special. These are humans, regardless of where you are in the day.
So, how do you respond to the leaders who say, but this is work? I can't possibly be friends with colleagues at work, because what happens if I have to give them tough feedback?
Sure. And that comes back to a relationship, not friends. Like friends is defined by very different people. Like how you might define a friendship is different than how I define friendships. And that goes back to defining things, setting boundaries,
Hmm.
context, communication. So if it's understanding relationships of, I'm in this position, you're in this position, there's mutual respect. I'm a big fan of using respectful relationships as opposed to using professional relationships, because I feel professional is used as a way of trying to make people fit within a box that they have a preconceived notion about, which flies in the face of anything diversity, equity, inclusivity, belonging, innovation.
Hmm.
But when it comes to respectful relationships, you can still give tough feedback, fire people. Like you can
Hmm.
do anything as long as there's a foundation of respectful and trusted relationships. if nothing is a surprise, if you've been building conversations every day, as opposed to, yeah, I'm going to talk to you in 6 months during our performance review and then I'll never talk to you again. That's not a relationship. And
Hmm.
I think we need to be focusing a lot more of the relationship that works with those individuals. So for example, me having that team for 12 years, they were night and day different people within that team. They were not all homogenized by any stretch of the imagination. So one of the biggest keys for me keeping that relationship so long, was it was so personalized. It was so focused on that person. They need me to put streamers out anytime they do anything worth rewarding. Meanwhile, this person over here, I don't even want you to make eye contact with me if I do a good job. I don't want to know about it. I don't, just leave me alone. I'm just powering through. And that's fine, because we can't bring our preconceived notions and biases to these relationships. We need to do it on their terms. So, yeah, I would say, even in any situation, bad news, good news, whatever, if you focus on the relationship, a respectful one, that will actually ease over and make almost anything else easier to understand. It might not be great, but at least there's a foundation of good intention.
Love it. So, as we come to the end of our time together, what's something, a rhetorical question or a point you want to make that will leave our listeners with food for thought?
Trust is so integral to any of these relationships. And we throw it around a lot. And it's one of those things that there's bad trust too. We can't just assume trust is good, because I've trusted leaders to backstab me. I've trusted leaders to take credit from a work. Trust needs to be better understood in the organization as to what that actually means, in order to build it and know what goes into building it for individuals, teams, business areas, the organization. And I don't think we spend enough time in understanding what trust looks like and focusing enough on it so that we can do all the great things.
Okay. Where can people learn more about your work, and when is your book likely to
Oh,
hit the
oh,
shelves?
oh,
Oh,
that's pressure. There's pressure. So we'll stick with the easy one.
yeah.
Russel Lolacher at russellolacher.com, or easier, relationshipsatwork.ca. I'm Canadian, don't you know? So that's probably the easiest to find me on my website, or hello@russellolacher.com. Easy way to know my last name. I love this. My brother was trying to do a tattoo on his knuckles. Our last name is 8 letters. I kid you not. And he quickly found out that he didn't want to do that because he was going to have Lola on one of his knuckles. And I'm like, yeah, but you'll have
Yeah.
Cher on the other. That is so badass. So Lola and Cher actually would have been the last name. So easy to remember and easy to spell. Anyway, so that's easy. My book, which I am focusing on, The 7 Deadly Sins, I'm working on it. I'm hoping next year. I have a big milestone birthday coming, so I'd like to really focus my next milestone and focusing that over the next year ahead. I'll certainly be talking about it as quickly as I get it done.
Well, let me know when you have an estimated delivery date, and I'll do
Thank you.
all we can here to help amplify it. And books, much like relationships, it's one word, one conversation at a time. But congratulations on taking that leap. Look forward to reading it in due course. So you have been listening to me, Morag Barrett, the host of People First, and my fabulous guest this week, Russel Lolacher, Russel Lolacher, talking about the importance of relationships at work. And I encourage you, please do listen and subscribe to his podcast and blog. And thank you again, Russel, for the conversation today.
It's been a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining Morag today. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. If you learned something worth sharing, share it. Cultivate your relationships today when you don't need anything before you need something. Be sure to follow SkyeTeam and Morag on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you have any ideas about topics we should tackle, interviews we should do, or if you yourself would like to be on the show, drop us a line at info@skyeteam.com. That's SKYE team.com. Thanks again for joining us today, and remember, business is personal and relationships matter. We are your allies.